Hello and welcome to this webinar focused on 3 nutrition tweaks that you can make to improve your running performance. If this is the first video that you're watching, welcome. My name's James, I'm a performance nutritionist here at Fuel the Runner. In terms of me, I have a background in sports nutrition. I've worked as a sports nutritionist for about the past 8 years or so now. And more recently, a few years ago, I then set up Fuel the Runner. Fuel the Runner is something that came about through my own running journey. So I was really fortunate to get a place in the London Marathon back in 2020, and as I started to train, started to build up, what I found is there was loads of support available in terms of the training plans and programs, but the trouble was there was no support available in terms of the nutrition, so hence Fuel the Runner was created. In terms of me, in terms of my background journey, having run now for a good few years, it is something I thoroughly enjoy. And for me, just over the years, I've seen so many runners that have missed out on PBs, have faced the consequences in terms of having poor nutrition or no nutrition strategy that's then maybe impacted their health, their well-being. I've run the London Marathon before with people then trying to eat slices of pizza, and unfortunately it meant that having had that slice of pizza half a mile down the road or further down the course, they were then throwing up and needing to sort of find a private space to go to the toilet. So this is where nutrition can be a real challenge for a lot of runners to navigate, usually because they're not sure of what to have, or maybe they've been told sort of poor information, misinformation by a fellow runner, someone on social media, and things like that. In terms of what I'm going to come on to in this webinar, as I said, I'm going to focus on 3 tweaks that you can make to enhance your running performance. Before that though, I'm going to focus a little bit more about why nutrition is important for running performance. So for me, as I say, nutrition is something that is often overlooked by a majority of athletes from the first team elite level all the way down to the amateur level, and it's the food or the fuel that you put into your body that's going to have a huge impact on the performance that you get out of it. So what you can see on the screen is by no means a definitive list. I'm not going to go through all of these points in loads of depth and detail, but just to show you how important nutrition is. Again, in terms of its role, you've got the impact it has on race day. So if you're doing a marathon, half marathon event or something else, how you feel, if you're not fueling, this is going to make it much harder for you to hit that sort of target PB that you might be chasing. Equally, it's going to make that race a lot less enjoyable because you're now feeling tired. That fatigue is now setting in much earlier than you were expecting. Your nutrition also plays a key role in terms of supporting your recovery too. So again, what you eat, how much and when can impact how quickly you recover after a long run, big training week. Maybe if you're doing back-to-back races, again, it's going to have a huge impact here. In terms of the training adaptation, again, what you eat and drink will also have a huge impact here. So the most successful runners or athletes that I've worked with are those that have an effective nutrition strategy that they follow before and after every training session. And that's essentially what helps them get stronger, fitter, faster. So I'll come on to this point in a little bit more detail in a moment. Your nutrition also has a huge impact in terms of your risk of injury and illness. So if you're under fueling, it's putting your immune system under a lot more stress and strain in order to function. And so again, it's really important to take this into account. Nutrition also plays a key role in terms of supporting your body composition. So if you're trying to maybe lose a little bit of body fat, for example, it's really important that we try and optimize the nutrition strategy to ensure that happens, rather than what some runners do where they go into this huge calorie deficit, and actually it's not so much the fat they're losing, it's more the muscle, which then impacts things like their endurance, their pace, and other things too. Again, nutrition is not just about running performance though, it's also the impact it has in terms of overall health and well-being too. So what you eat and drink, again, it is also going to ensure that you are maintaining this optimal health and well-being. Again, we'll come on to that in a bit more detail. So the first tweak I'm going to start with is around the carbohydrate timing. So when it comes to nutrition, you may have heard of what's often referred to as the 3 T's of nutrition. So you have your type, which is all to do with what you eat and drink, your total, which is all to do with the quantities and the amounts that you consume, and the third T, and in my experience this is something that most athletes tend to overlook, is then the timing. So this is all to do with when you eat and drink throughout the day, as well as in the build up to exercise, maybe during exercise, and then after exercise as well. So just to highlight a little bit more about this. First of all, in terms of why carbohydrate is important for running performance, essentially providing we fueled ourselves effectively beforehand, we have enough energy for around 2 hours worth of high intensity exercise. If you're under fueling yourself, or if you're going out for some longer training sessions, longer runs, if you haven't got any fuel in your body, you're going to struggle to perform. It's a bit like trying to drive from London to Scotland on half a tank of petrol. The car is only going to get so far before it conks out, and this is what's going to happen within the body as well. So it's really important that we are consuming sufficient quantities of carbohydrate in the build up and during particularly some of your long runs and long training sessions, because that's what's going to help you perform at your best and essentially delay that early onset of fatigue. And so this is where that run becomes a lot harder. You might give up, you might struggle to see it through. So to focus on the timing side of things then, in terms of timing, carbohydrate or fueling for a run starts around 2 to 3 hours before the run itself. So the timing here is really important. So it allows the time for the body to digest that particular meal, and so you've got the energy available. Whereas if you're consuming too much too soon, too quickly before exercise, so having a huge bowl of porridge before, like a 45 minutes to an hour before you run, chances are you're going to start run and you're going to start to feel very sick, or maybe feel like you need to go to the toilet, otherwise known as runner's gut. On the other hand, if you're then consuming a big meal but maybe 4 or 5 hours before you run, chances are by the time you start to run, start to exercise, you're going to feel very hungry. So your timing here it is really key. To tie in with sort of quantities and how much, essentially, if you've got sort of more time available before the start of your exercise, your carbohydrate intake is going to be higher. As we get closer, our carbohydrate intake is going to be lower, just to minimise that risk of runner's gut. So if you've got an hour or so before you're going to run, aiming for somewhere around 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilogram of body mass. Equally, if you've then got 2-3 hours, aiming for closer to that sort of 3 grams of carbs per kilogram body mass. To give you an idea of what this might look like, so what you can see on the left hand side is some example meals that you might, or example sources of carbohydrate to incorporate in some of your meals. So pasta dishes, the porridge, cereal for example, things like bagels if that's your go-to. It might be something like a jacket potato. And then for the sort of snacks that you might have, like I say, with maybe an hour or so to go, you could use things like fruit, things like cereal bars. You might use jams and condiments on some toast. It might be that you add them to your bowl of porridge, for example, just for an additional hit of carbohydrate that's then quick releasing. So it's going to give you this quick release of carbohydrate that's going to help you maintain your running performance there. Other options, again, looking at the liquid-based fueling options, so smoothies, fruit juices are a fantastic source of carbohydrate that you could then use in this example before a run. One thing I should say with some of these choices, you might be thinking, oh, fruit juices, they're full of sugar. I'm not saying you should have this all the time, but when it comes to sort of food and nutrition, it's more this case of, rather than looking at it from the point of good food versus bad food, or same thing with drinks, it's then looking at what's the most appropriate option in that scenario. So if you've got an early morning run that you're going to get up and run within, say, half hour, 40 minutes or so, having something like a smoothie that maybe you make yourself, or a glass of orange juice, that's just going to give you that really quick hit of carbohydrate. Obviously, if you're on a rest day, quiet day, this is something I wouldn't necessarily have on those days. Tweak 2 is then about your hydration. So as we come in at time of recording, we're now into the start of June. And again, this is where we're constantly bombarded on social media with you must have your electrolytes and things like that. Yes, don't get me wrong, electrolytes have a time and a place within our diet, but quite often, based on experience, a majority of the time, it's the fact that the runner's just not consuming anywhere near enough in the first place in terms of their fluid. Again, just to highlight first of all a little bit why, or a little bit about the impacts of dehydration. So if we're not drinking enough fluid, we start to lose quite a significant amount through sort of day-to-day movement and action. And if we're not replacing that fluid that's being lost, it's going to start to impact our performance. So we start to see this reduction in endurance, maybe from a physiological point of view, but then equally we start to see this decline in psychological function, focus, concentration. So your ability to maintain that sort of race pace is also impacted as well. Once, and even beyond that, once your sort of fluid loss due to dehydration starts to exceed way beyond this, so if we're now into sort of 3 to 4% dehydration, so for most runners this is going to be somewhere between a kilo up to maybe 2 or 3 kilos, maybe even beyond that, to be fair, it's going to do yourself some, or potentially increasing your risk of some really serious sort of health issues and health factors. So it is really important to make sure you are drinking plenty of fluid. In 2025, I ran the London Marathon. It's very, very hot. It's about 28 degrees on the course. And whilst running around, I've never seen so many runners passing out or in the medical tent. And I'm willing to bet a majority of those runners were probably dehydrated. And as part of that, when we become very dehydrated, it's then putting additional demands on the body. So what we're actually doing here is using additional glycogen stores. So it's then impacting our fueling strategy. So this is why it is so important to make sure you are drinking plenty of fluid. In terms of how much fluid we need on a sort of day-to-day basis, if you've done some research, you may have seen a little bit about this, but essentially how much we need is going to be impacted by quite a number of factors. So impacted by things like body size. So just for ease, if I was to draw a sort of diagram on the screen or draw a graph, what you'd see if you've got an increase in weight on the x-axis and an increase in fluid requirement on the y-axis, you'd see pretty much a diagonal line going through. So essentially, with an increase in weight comes the increase in fluid required to stay hydrated. On top of that, you then have the individual sweat rate. So everyone's different in terms of how much they would lose in that sort of given situation. As part of that, in terms of the environment, so if you're in a really sort of hot, humid environment, this is going to increase the amount of fluid that you're sweating or losing as well. So it's really important to take this into account as well. In terms of training and exercise, if you're doing a sort of light session, maybe going for a leisurely walk, your sweat rate is going to be much lower compared to if you were doing a really high intensity run, really high intensity session. So it's really important to take this into account as well. As a result, in terms of how much a runner needs from a fluid point of view, according to NHS guidelines in the UK are that we should be drinking at least 2 litres of sugar-free fluid per day. However, a more sort of relevant or a better guideline is to basically multiply your body weight in kilograms by 35 millilitres, and this will give you a good target to try and aim for each day. Just for ease of maths, if you're a 100 kilogram runner or a 100 kilogram athlete, for you, when you multiply this out, this is going to be about 3.5 litres. If you've then got a runner, or if you're a runner that's around the 70 kilogram mark, this is going to be about 2.4 litres of fluid to try and drink each day. Again, this is just a guide to try and work towards an aim for. You might find that actually, based on the factors I've just mentioned, you need to drink a lot more than this in order to stay hydrated. In terms of staying hydrated and monitoring our hydration status, we can essentially do this by 3 ways. So the first one is things like an increase in thirst. So during the day, whilst exercising, you get that sort of really dry throat. This is probably a good indicator that you are dehydrated. Second one is then our urine colour. So when you go to the toilet, I'm sure you've all seen a urine colour look something like this. What we want to aim for is this sort of pale straw clear colour. So somewhere near the top of this hydration chart you can see on the screen. If your urine colour looks somewhere sort of nearer the bottom, this dark yellow, maybe a sort of dark brown, dark orange colour, this is likely to be a good indicator that you're very dehydrated. So it's really important that you do try and drink at regular intervals throughout the day. So things like setting a timer on your phone, investing in a water bottle. It's a really simple but very effective tool just to help you stay hydrated throughout the day. The third thing that we can also do is actually monitor changes in our body weight. So this is basically involves weighing yourself in minimal clothing before a run or before a training session, and then weighing yourself afterwards. So just for demonstration purposes, if you go out for a run and it's an hour in duration, and you weigh yourself before, weigh yourself after, and you've lost, let's say, 1 kilogram, we know that a kilogram is the equivalent to about 1 litre. So we therefore know your sweat rate is around 1 litre per hour because we've done an hour's run there. And this will then give you an idea of how much you then need to try and drink and incorporate into your hydration strategy as part of your longer runs or any upcoming races. So if you've lost a kilo in an hour, if you're going to do an event that's going to take you, say, 3, even 4 hours, potentially you're then losing closer to that sort of 3-4 kilograms, which, going back to some of the previous content that I've just shared, you're now into the point where you're losing more than sort of 3-4% of your body weight just through sweat, and it can do yourself some really serious harm, really serious damage there. So it's really important you do take this into account. In terms of electrolytes, I can't talk about hydration without talking about them. So when it comes to electrolytes, do we need them? Yes. However, depends on the situation that we're in. So, first of all, electrolytes, these are minerals that are lost in our sweat, and we have a number of key electrolytes that play sort of different roles within the body. So they help maintain things like fluid balance, nerve function, they help maintain things like muscle contraction during exercise as well. In terms of how and when to take them, for me, I'd always make sure you are consuming sufficient volumes of fluid in the first place. But having said that, if you are going out for sort of long sessions, you are training in the heat, you have maybe a high sweat rate, one sort of electrolyte tablet per 500 milliliters of fluid should be more than sufficient to stay hydrated. You don't need to be adding sort of 3-4 of these to a water bottle. I have seen a lot of runners do this, and it sometimes has ended up in disaster. And when they say, oh, I'm feeling really sick and tired, I'm getting the cramps, it's not always due to the electrolytes. Quite often it could be the fact that they're dehydrated. More likely it is that they're dehydrated and they've just not consumed anywhere near enough in terms of the fluid there. The third tweak is then about the recovery. So over the years of doing this, what I often find is recovery nutrition and having a recovery strategy is something that most athletes, not just runners, overlook. And that lack of recovery strategy is the thing that stops you recovering, and this is what starts to impact your training adaptation. Equally, the most successful individuals I've seen over the years are those that have an effective nutrition strategy that they follow before and after every training session. So just to help you with this, when it comes to that recovery strategy, like I say, I'd probably say a majority of athletes that when I first started working with them, they fall somewhere around this sort of grey line that you can see on the screen. So they have no recovery strategy, their training adaptation is not improving. So people say to me, I'm going out, doing these runs, I'm going to the gym, but I'm not actually getting any stronger or not getting any faster. And I'd probably say this is the reason. The most successful individuals, as I mentioned, they're the ones in that sort of red line. They've got this really good recovery strategy in place. They're able to do all their training sessions. They're not picking up the injuries and illnesses that I mentioned previously. In terms of how they go about doing this is where, again, you may have come across the 3 R's of recovery. For me, I actually refer to it as the 5 R's, and you'll see a little bit more about this. The first R is around rehydrate, so replacing that fluid that you're losing during your runs and exercise. The second R is around the refuel. Again, I should say I will talk about these in more detail on the next slide. The refuel is about adding carbohydrate to your post-exercise snacks and meals. The third R is the rebuild, so this is about the importance of protein to support muscle growth and repair. The fourth R, not so much nutrition focused, but more about the importance of rest and good quality sleep. So aiming for a good night's sleep each night, maybe even like a post-run nap, can certainly help enhance that recovery process. The fifth R that I add to this is then what I refer to as repeat. So this is about the importance of doing it after every race, after every run, after every training session. You might do this every now and then, but like I say, it's the consistency of doing these things consistently that's going to help you have the biggest improvement or biggest impact there. Just to highlight about these in a bit more depth and detail then. So when it comes to the refuel, we want to start that recovery process as soon as possible. So thinking about sources of carbohydrate in terms of maybe some snacks that you can keep in your kit bag or gym bag. So it could be cereal bars, it could be pieces of fruit, it could be some energy balls, oat bars, things like that you maybe make yourself. Same thing with the rebuild and the protein. What sources of protein could you then have available to support that muscle growth and repair? So maybe an option might be, if you've got the ability to store them at a suitable temperature, might be like some yogurts, might be things like some milk, for example. In terms of the rehydrate, again, replacing that fluid that's been lost during exercise. So if you're if you're losing a significant amount of fluid, but it's not being replaced, chances are you're going to be dehydrated in sort of leading up to your next training session. It might impact not just your running performance, but equally some of the other things you might have, such as your work demands, for example, too. As I mentioned, if you're losing, let's say, a kilo during your runs or during your exercises, for every kilo of body weight lost, it's recommended to be trying to drink at least 1.5 litres of fluid, just to ensure you are trying to sufficiently rehydrate yourself there. The fourth part is then around the rest. So when it comes to recommendations, it's recommended that we should be trying to aim for at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. And what's really important, as I say, it can also help having like a sort of post-run nap, particularly if it's maybe during a high training week, maybe after a long run. 20 minutes, half an hour or so has been shown to be a great way to further enhance that recovery process there too. Just to show you what a few examples might look like from a nutrition point of view, so like I say, maybe starting off with the snacks that you can keep in the car, in your kit bag, gym bag, things like that. Might be the cereal bars and fruit, the smoothies that I mentioned. You can make these yourself or obviously buy them shop bought. In terms of things like milk is a fantastic post-exercise recovery option because you've got that really good source of protein, that source of carbohydrate. It's helping to rehydrate, and if you are using particularly sort of the cow's milk options, you've also got that really good source of calcium. If you're someone that uses sort of dairy alternatives, do be aware that some of those dairy alternatives will lack the calcium that's found in the cow's milk, so it's really important that you get that from other sources within your diet there. Once you're home, or once you've got access to more sort of cooking facilities, food storage options, in terms of meals, things like pasta dishes, rice dishes with a source of protein, plenty of vegetables, it can also help further enhance that recovery process, so reduce the soreness, the inflammation as well. So for me, my sort of go-to option is usually things like a stir fry. It's quick, it's easy. I can dice up some chicken, add a handful of vegetables depending on what I've got in the fridge and cupboards, add some seasoning for a bit of taste, and then depending on what my day's been like or session's been like, I could then add a source of carbohydrate such as some rice to go with it there. So that's my personal favourite, but you don't have to use that by any means. So I hope you have found this as a useful webinar. It's given you some ideas of where you can make a few tweaks to further enhance your performance moving forward. If you're a runner that's maybe looking to take your running performance to the next level, you might be interested to know that I've recently relaunched the Fuel the Runner support program. This is a program that is basically open for runners of all levels and abilities, and it's essentially for runners who want to enhance their running performance. They want to hit new PBs, they want to hit or stop hitting the wall during their long run, they want to recover faster, they want to build better nutrition habits, not just around the running performance but life outside of running. So nutrition habits that tie in with work demands, family demands, other commitments that they have there as well. In terms of the benefits and what you get, so as part of your membership, we host regular webinars each month, so there's at least 2 webinars from me around various nutrition topics. Equally, there are guest speakers being lined up that will cover other topics, not just nutrition, so psychology, physiology, running coaches, injury prevention, and things like that. So dates for those events are to be confirmed, but they're very much in the pipeline. You also get access to a community of like-minded runners who are looking to sort of enhance their performance, level up together. Each week there'll be a sort of weekly drop-in Q&A or drop-in call with myself, so feel free to jump on. You can either ask me a question and I'll help you with whatever your question is. Maybe you want to listen to other runners, that's absolutely fine as well. There's no pressure there at all. You also get access to fueling guides, nutrition guides for not just for a variety of topics such as recovery, such as race day, such as navigating the supermarket and some of those other challenges that runners often face. Equally, there's lots of easy to make, budget friendly recipe ideas. So if you're looking for some new ideas for meals, snack options, snack ideas, that is for you as well. Equally, as it starts to grow, as it starts to build, there are lots of new features coming to the platform, and I'll be sharing more about those on the Fuel the Runner platform and social media pages. So if maybe you don't want to join at the moment, but you want to keep up to date, check out the Instagram and Facebook page where I do share, as I say, lots of nutrition topics, tips, resources, and recipes to support your running performance. If you're ready to take the leap and you want to sign up, if you scan this QR code, it should take you to the link to join the platform. At present, at time of recording, there is a founding membership offer going on. So if you're one of the first 100 runners to join the platform, you will stay locked in at a membership price of $4.99 a month or $24.99 every 6 months if you pay up front. So you then get essentially the 6 month for free included in that. As I mentioned, I'm very active on both Facebook and Instagram, so that is the Fuel the Runner Instagram page and Facebook group, so feel free to join, where again I share lots of recipes and resources. Equally, if you have a question, feel free to post in the community and we can help support each other there. I also work with runners on a one-to-one basis, so if you're looking for sort of more of an in-depth support program, if you're looking for additional tips and advice, you can see all the contact details there. So I've mentioned the social media pages, but you can see or feel free to drop me an email at fueltherunner@gmail.com. In the meantime, do click the link below this video. There's lots of additional resources that you can get access to. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope to see you on the Fuel the Runner platform soon.